Welcome to another episode. We appreciate you being here. We got another great guest. Today we have Tina Valiant with us. Tina, tell us a little bit about yourself and who you serve in the industry.
Oh my goodness. So I am a team leader of a real estate team. I've had my real estate license 21 years, and my team has been able to do amazing things since I've been in Arizona. I've been here less than 5 years, started a team 3.5 years ago, and it's been truly an amazing journey. And then on the other side of that, with coaching everybody, I realized that so many people have these past issues, past traumas, limiting beliefs that have come up across their lives that's preventing them from success. So with that, I also wrote a book specifically for women because women kept coming to me with all of these past issues that they didn't know how to overcome and trying to regain who they were. So I wrote a book on that.
I appreciate that. I really want to get to the book. I have a few questions for you about that. But I want to ask you, when you're talking about the 21 years ago, where were you and what got you into real estate?
So that's actually a funny story. I was a stay-at-home mom.
Okay.
I needed purpose beyond the house mom, housewife type of thing. My husband at the time was very, very controlling and did not want me to work. I also was very, very sick, like to the point where I was in bed a lot for 2 years trying to figure out what was wrong and process of elimination surgeries to try to fix the pain, and they were wrong the whole time. And when we moved to Florida from Colorado, I started treatment for Crohn's disease and started to get better, and realized while I was in the hospital in Colorado, I had to make a change in my life. I remember looking at my husband and thinking, I don't even like you. And just as a person. And I remember looking at my young daughters and thinking to myself, I haven't created enough memories if I never get out of this hospital bed, because they told me they thought I had cancer and that I probably was not going to make it out of this hospital. That's how sick I was. And I just remember looking at my daughters and thinking, oh my gosh, like I haven't created enough memories that if I never make it out of here, they're not going to remember me at all. And it was in that defining moment that I realized I had to make a change. 2 months later, we were in Florida, and we had relocated for him because he said he would be happier there. And I continued with my treatments. I met this amazing doctor who my insurance didn't convert over to Florida. And my procedures, my Remicade treatments that are IV infusions for 4 hours at a time. Medications were at the time $12,000 a treatment, not including the doctor visit and everything else. And I met this amazing doctor there that said, you know what, I'm gonna put you in this program with the pharmaceutical company where as long as I administer the treatment for free, they will give it to you for free. She never charged me for an appointment ever in her office. Wow. And treated me to health over 2 years. And it was an unbelievable experience. And in that time, a friend of mine's husband said, you know what, I think you would be amazing in timeshare sales. And I'm like, what is timeshare? I had no idea what it was, but being in Orlando, you're in the timeshare mecca, right? Like you're in the middle of it all. And I'm like, well, okay, I mean, if I'm supposed to, then, you know, God will open the way and I'll go to the interview. And I just remember driving to, you know, Orlando from this little teeny town, Claremont, and thinking, I don't know what I'm doing. Like I had to borrow clothes from a friend to go to this interview. They had to prep me for even what to say. I don't believe at that moment I realized that I had ever sold anything in my life. And I was going into a fully commissioned sales position if they wanted me. And I just remember thinking, you know what? If I'm supposed to do this, then the doors will be open. Right. And they hired me on the spot. I don't even remember what was said because I don't believe it came from me. And I had to get my real estate license in 3 weeks so that I could go into my intensive training, and that's where it all began.
From timeshare, huh?
Yep, voted least likely to succeed in my training class of 12.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. I didn't have the look. I didn't have the knowledge. I didn't have anything that anybody thought would succeed, but what they underestimated was my determination. And I was the only one left after 3 months and in the top 10% of the resort.
Interesting. I appreciate you sharing that, pushing through, right? Just pushing through. I'm just thinking about how if you hadn't made that trip with your husband at the time, that you may not have seen the results that you saw. It's just interesting how all those things work out for us.
We call those the dots in your life.
Okay.
We have all of these different dots, and we may see these dots as traumatic. We may see them as horrible. And then all of a sudden one day, you're looking back at all of these dots, good, bad, indifferent, throughout your life that have led you to exactly where you are right now, and you can see how it all transpired.
Right. It's just the weave. Weave. Yeah, cool. Thank you. Thanks. I appreciate you being willing to share that.
Sure.
So as a kid, did you grow up in Colorado? Is that
I
okay?
did.
Okay. So as a kid, little girl running around the town, who inspired you? What was that like, and what did you want to be?
So let me back up a little bit. I lived in Las Vegas until I was 12.
Okay.
So like from the age of 4 to 12. And during that time in my life, it was a very tumultuous time.
Okay.
And I had a very rough childhood. I actually write about that in my book. It was the hardest portion of the book to write. It was the last chapter that I wrote, even though it's the first chapter, because it was hard for me to share my story. When we moved to Colorado, it was because my mom had finally started turning her life around. She was a young mom. She had me very young. And she had turned her life around, and that's how we ended up back in Colorado. A family friend who I call my aunt came and got us and took us there. And it was a life-changing moment, literally, because had we stayed in Las Vegas, I don't know how life would have turned out for any of us. I really don't. And in that moment, I started school there. I was so different than the other kids. I had been through so much in my life and seen so many things at that point that I was always the oddball. Nobody ever understood me and kind of stayed away from me. And it was because I was so different than them. And I was shy because I didn't want people to know.
So taking all of that, those experiences that you've had, how have you translated that into your business and building that and helping others grow? You mentioned a little bit about mentoring, but how does that translate for you?
Well, I think that in the professional world, how it comes into play is there's not anybody that I meet on a day-to-day basis that I am not empathetic to their current circumstances. Because either me or somebody I know has probably been through what they're going through. I love helping people that are in the retirement age because they're in a transition of their life. And I think that that's a special place for me. I like to make a difference. So whether they're having to go to assisted living or, maybe they're retiring now and they're so excited to start this journey, whatever it may be, we're there to help them through that transition of life, and that's special to me. I don't think that I would have been that type of salesperson or mentor or trainer had I not gone through everything that I had been through.
Thank you. So when you mentioned off camera, I guess I should say, that you kind of just had a vision to write the book. Tell us a little bit about that. How did that come about?
So I was sitting at breakfast with my mom, and sometimes I get visions, and there's other things that occur in my world, like dreams and different things that come true. And I was literally sitting there. We weren't talking about anything like this. And this vision just came over me that I was standing in front of women and that they were crying healing tears and tears of joy, of release. And it was overwhelming, this vision. And it was me leading them through that healing. And I looked at my mom and I was like, well, I think I'm supposed to have these women's workshops. Like, I don't know. Like, this is just what happened. And she's like, oh, okay. And I said, I think I'm supposed to write a book. And she's like, okay, because everybody says they're going to write a book and nobody writes a book. And, I was like, no, really, I think this is real. And she's like, okay, well, I accepted that challenge, what I feel was from the Lord that day, and said, okay, if this is what you want me to do, I'll do it. And the next morning I woke up and the entire outline of the workshops and the book was downloaded into my head. I woke up at 4:30 in the morning and literally just started writing. And it's funny because I just sent that outline to Katie the other day, the very first outline, and I never changed it. That outline is the whole outline of the book, the women's workshops that are coming up and everything that we're doing with that. And the chapters turned out the same way, where I would meet somebody, they would inspire a chapter that was in the outline, and the next morning I would wake up and an entire chapter would be downloaded in my head. I'd write it out in like an hour, hour and a half, and that's how it started.
That is awesome. I appreciate that, especially just having the courage to move forward when we kind of got those impressions. So thank you. So let's talk about the healing that you foresee, and what does that look like for you? What does that look like to you?
For other women?
Yeah.
I think that women are in a place in their lives where we tend to blame other people for the circumstances that are in our life. And we tend to put ourselves in this societal box of, when we get married, we're supposed to leave all of our dreams and aspirations aside because our job is to take care of our husband and our children. And if you think about it, every fairy tale that we've ever watched is exactly that story. He rides in on a white horse, saves the princess, takes her back to his castle where they're going to live happily ever after, and she leaves all of her friends and all of her family. We don't think about that that's what we've been taught since birth, but that is the reality. So here's what I found in relationships between men and women. Men come to me and they say to me, I don't know what happened to the woman that I fell in love with. You know, I realize, like, you know, she's taking care of the kids now, she's taking care of me, she's taking care of the house, but she seems so mad at me. And I don't understand why. I don't understand where all of her dreams and aspirations went. And then on the flip side, I have these women are like, he made me give up everything, and he made me do this, and he made me do that. And the reality of it is, we chose our roles. When the day we got married, we made an agreement with ourselves and them in our mind that we were going to give everything up so that we could be everything that society expected us to be. But it was a choice we made ourselves. So why are we so mad at him? So with these workshops, it's a place where we can help women get back to who they originally were. Everything that they left behind because they thought they had to, and help them realize that it was a choice so that they can move past it and get back to who they first were.
I like that. You know, it has me going through my mind of, you know, my own relationship with my wife, and, you know, the communications and things that we're dealing with. So I appreciate that perspective. That's awesome. We had a little bit of conversation beforehand about masculinity or emasculating. What's the word I'm looking for?
Emasculating men.
There we go, emasculating
Yes.
men. So we were kind of back and forth on, at least from my perspective, I'm thinking, yeah, I get it, but maybe we were just a little too sensitive. And from yours, it's, yeah, that may be the case, but women are really doing this. Can we talk a little bit about that, just from your perspective of some of the things you told me of what's going on in relationships?
Sure. I think that we are in an epidemic of women emasculating men, not even because they realize it or intend to, but because it's what we've been taught and what's become so socially acceptable. I do not believe that we are in a world right now where men are truly allowed to be men. And yet at the same time, women are asking, well, I just want a real man in my life. Why can't I find one? Well, then stop taking their manhood away. And you were asking me, well, what does that look like? Give me some examples. Women don't realize that when we interrupt men when they're talking, men think differently than women. I equate it to men think like waffles, very singularly focused, intentionally so, intentionally created that way. Women think in spaghetti. We see everything around us all the time because we are the nurturer, the mothers, and we have to multitask. It's innately who we are. We as women take it personally offensive if men leave the socks on the floor when they get up and they go to work. Well, we think it's personal. It's not. They didn't see it because they got up with the sole objective that they were going to go provide for their family that day. That's what they're focused on. That's what their brain is thinking. So we as women, we're like, well, but the trash needs taken out and the dishes need done and I need to prepare for dinner and I need to go grocery shopping and I need to go to work because we're in a two-income society. And they think that men intentionally are putting all of that on us when really what it is women have a hard time asking for help. They have a hard time communicating that. And instead, what it comes across as nagging, and nagging is emasculating in and of itself. It's ripping a man down when he doesn't even realize what he was doing that irritated you to begin with.
I can appreciate that. I do. And as I said off camera we were speaking, I see all of that, and I even see that in my own relationship, but I often take it as maybe it's me, like maybe I can do a little bit better about my interpretation of what's going on. Just to soften up, just to give a little more grace of everyone's having their life, right? Everyone's living their life. So I'm almost hoping and wondering that maybe we both just need to rise to the occasion of showing grace and being thoughtful of others' feelings and experiences. So
let me ask you a question. If you want you both to rise to the occasion, as you say, and come with grace, how does that happen if communication as to what's being offensive isn't had?
This is true, and that was kind of my drawback is, when do you get to the point that you're comfortable enough to say that, right? That really hurt me. So we're at that point in our life now where we can do that, but it just needed to come quicker and earlier on. So how do you do that? Is it time? Do you just need to do it? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I was sharing with you that once my eyes were open to the fact that I had emasculated men all of my life, and I had no idea. When I found out, I was horrified. I cried. I was like, I can't believe that I've done this. And I've created negative situations in my own relationships because of this, and I didn't even realize what I was doing. Let me give you a good example of this. I used to say to the men in my life, I don't need you in my life. I can take care of myself. I want you. Not realizing that by me making that statement, it hits the core and the essence of who a man is, and that they want to protect you. They want to provide for you. They want you to need them and need their help because it's innately who they are. And I didn't realize that I was completely taking that away in that statement. I thought it was showing that I was with them because I wanted them, not because I needed them. And I never realized how much it tore them down. And I had to apologize to them for saying that to them once I realized what I had done. I created a world of competition in my life with the men in my life and didn't realize that I was doing that. And it's because I was so self-sufficient and could take care of myself that they were constantly in competition with me to prove that they could take care of me. And once I realized that, I was mortified by that. Like, I created a lot of the circumstances that I was bitter about.
So how have you gotten there? What brought you to that point to, I guess, be humble enough for that?
I think illness over time, like different illnesses and things, realizing that relationship-wise, a lot of the issues, I mean, at the end of the day, if you're having problems with relationships over and over and over again, you're the common denominator, and it's time to start looking at yourself and where you need to change and where you need to grow. And one of the biggest things was I had to drop my ego. I had to learn that I don't need to do everything by myself in order for it to be done correctly. And that was part of team building too. I think, back in the day with law offices and foreclosure defense, I had to build my first team, and I was a horrible team leader, absolutely horrible. They used to have a code word for me when I was being too much, so that they could let me know.
What was that word?
I can't even remember. It was like popcorn or something, like peanuts, like just something that would catch my attention to let me know I was being too strong and too hard. And it was because I had this micromanaging personality where I thought that I had to rule everything or it wasn't going to get done the way that I could do it. And I had to let some of that go. That's all ego. Trying to save people, trying to put them on the right path, that's ego. It took me a long time to realize my job is not to save other people. I can plant seeds. I can show them what I see and the path that they're on versus the path, if they turn a little, what it could be like, but it's not my job to make them turn. My kids once told me that I needed to stop collecting people and start collecting animals because I collected the broken.
Interesting.
And I had to heal from that. I had to realize maybe I was focusing on other people because I didn't want to focus on myself.
That's profound. I think a lot of people who help people probably are dealing with that. I see that in myself often. Just I got my own problems, but if I help these people, those will be okay. So I can appreciate that. So let's talk a little bit more about kind of the book, and if you have a favorite passage you'd like to share, or just a thought that you'd like to share.
Okay, so the book is Finding Your Voice, and it is found on Amazon, and I guess it's going to be syndicated next week on the other 38,000 websites, whatever that looks like. It is Christian published. However, I wanted it to speak to the masses. That was really important to me. So although I do talk about my faith, I don't go in depth into that because I want people to discover for themselves. I talk a lot about past traumas, but more so I tell stories of other triumphant women in the book throughout the whole book. I mean, there's different topics from arranged marriages and how somebody made the best out of that and came out on top after she was finally able to leave that situation that was very abusive, to even my assistant. I write about Mariah in the book, and her chapter is You Are Enough. I didn't say her name in the book, even though she allowed me to, and she likes when I share that chapter is her chapter. And it was interesting, when I first met Mariah, she didn't know how to dress for work. She was very nervous around people. She had this really loud laugh that startled people because nobody had ever taught her how to be in a corporate work setting. And when I first met her, I wasn't sure I wanted to hire her, but she came out with me and she had her notebook. And every single word that I wrote, or everything I spoke, she just kept writing everything I said that day. I'm like, wow, I can't teach that. She had been to Keller Williams Ignite training, to their Bold training, to everything she could possibly take. And she just wasn't making any transactions. And so I had to have a really tough conversation with Mariah. And that was in the car, and she's like, well, I would really like to come onto your team. And I said, well, we would need to change some things, but I need to have a really tough conversation with you. Are you ready? And she said, yes. I said, well, I'm going to ask you a tough question, and I need you to really think about it. If you and I were to go up against each other in a listing appointment, not because I'm the most beautiful woman in the world, but because I'm put together, who would win that listing? She said, you would. I said, if you know that, then why are you self-sabotaging yourself? She started crying. And she shared with me that she's always self-sabotaged herself, and that she's never had anybody show her how not to do that. And so we went on a journey. I said, well, we're gonna have to do a makeover, and you're gonna mentor and you're gonna shadow under me, and you can be with me every day. Let's see what happens. Let's see if we can make this happen. And over time, I realized that administratively, she was the bomb. Like, she was all over it. Sales-wise, she was great at getting people's information, but she was scared to death to do follow-up because of the rejection. It was a decision that she made to go fully on the assistant side and leave the sales side. And it was because it was better for her, even though at the time her husband wasn't totally sold on that idea, but he's come to the dark side, as I call it, over time. There was such a magnitude of change in her. After her makeover, I had her meet me at the office because I wanted her to see people's response. And when she walked in, everybody huddled around her and was like, oh my goodness, you look amazing. And she just kind of smiled, and she didn't know how to take it in. She's like, thank you. She was gracious, but she really didn't know how to take it in. And when we went outside, I looked at her and I said, well, how do you feel right now? She said, I didn't realize what a difference it makes for people to respect you because of how you look. And I said, I understand that people suck and that their perception should not be your reality, but that is how this business is. But now we can proceed with who you're meant to be.
It's awesome.
And we did. And that was 3.5 years ago.
It's awesome. Appreciate you sharing that. Just thinking about how often many of us self-sabotage. We may not know that we're doing it, and sometimes we do recognize just looking for another opportunity for whatever that is. But yeah, thank you for sharing that. Appreciate it.
So in her chapter is chapter 4 in the book, You Are Enough.
I like that.
And I can't reiterate enough to women. I'm tongue-tied today. I don't know what the deal is, but I can't reiterate enough to women that you are enough just as you are. You don't need to compare yourself to other people. In that chapter, and I could read a little blip because it's one of my favorite passages, but in that chapter, it talks about stop comparing yourself to everybody else. Be you. Love you for who you are because you're amazing.
I like it.
So
yeah, if you would, you don't mind finding that. And
sure. All right. The question of who we are inside can be frightening and exhilarating all at the same time. We, as women, tend to put who we are aside for the greater good of those around us. We make sacrifices and tend to put our dreams and total being on hold to avoid conflict and nurture those around us. We become chameleons to our circumstances, changing our colors with each situation to ensure peace. We lose who we really are over time as we continue to suffocate the voice within ourselves. In a previous chapter, I asked you to identify how you really feel about your life. It may have brought pain to you, but without pain, we cannot grow. We must first open the wounds in order to feel them properly. Now that the wounds of repression and emptiness are open, let's look at how we begin to heal so that we can be the best version of ourselves.
I like that. Thank you so much. I appreciate you being on today with us and just sharing those words and helping me understand where I am with my own travels and journey. Where can we find you? Where can the audience find you?
All right, so I have a website, tinavaliant.com, where you can also purchase the book through the Amazon link or directly from us. You can also find me on Facebook with book, Finding Your Voice, as well as I have a real estate book coming out this summer or fall called Relationship Real Estate, the 16 steps to real estate success that I created for my team and now I teach throughout the country. And that's probably the best ways to find me. I do have a private women's group called Women Thriving Together with Tina V on Facebook, and there is one male on that, and it is so that he can answer questions if women want to know, why do I keep experiencing this with men?
From a male perspective.
Yep, from a male perspective. I also have a new podcast that just launched this week called The Female Male Perspective with my co-host Eddie Cunningham, and he gives the male perspective, and I'm sure there are going to be times that we do not agree.
Oh, that is awesome. That sounds cool. I'm interested in that, so I'll be tuning in for that. Cool.
Absolutely.
Thanks for coming on. I appreciate you being here, sharing that with us.
It's been my pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.